Welcome to the Mud Shop. This is Diana's Mud Shop. Today is the last day of December 2021, and I thought I would share with you. Actually, it's not the last day, it's the 30th. Anyway, I thought I would share with you how to make a hand built mug. Now, in my tools and materials, my favorite size for mug is a 4.5 by 12 inch template, and but today I want to make one a little bit shorter. Here's an example of one, just a little bit shorter. Um, it's a good size mug, and that's what we're going to be making. So I have made another 4 inch by 12 inch. So this is the one we're going to use today. But the most common one used, like I said, is the 4.5 inch. It gives a nice size mug. Uh, I use, this is a placemat from the dollar store, and I use these to make templates, or I use craft foam and I just measure out and cut with scissors, and they last. I do mark on them what they are, the sizes, the best size fitting for the bottom of it and everything. So this is my template I'm going to use. The 4 inch cookie cutter works great for the bottom. If you want to make a topper, go up probably about the 4.5 inch is going to be plenty big enough. Unless you do bevel out the top, then you want to make sure you have a topper that's big enough to cover the top. If you see, it'll shrink some, but make sure you have one big enough to cover the top. Also, I'm going to use slip, which is, I just use the clay that scraps that I'm using and put a little water in it and make a slip. You see here, I have a serrated tool here. You can see the edges are serrated, and that's what I use to score the clay. Also, I have my own Maker's Mark stamp, so you'll want to make sure that you either stamp it or that you sign the bottom of it, because you always want to mark your piece. I use the Cheryl Mud Tool Ribs. This is the red number 4. The yellow number 3 is really good to get inside and smooth out the inside. And then little small areas, I use the red 0. And they also have one, I think I found this on GR Pottery Forms. This is really this cut in half, but it's great to smooth out the rims of your mugs. If you have trouble smoothing them out, making sure they're good and smooth, because you want that's where your mouth is going to be. So you want to make sure that's good and smooth. But like I said, GR Pottery Form sells this little cute tool, or you can use little chamois cloth or whatever to smooth out the rim. I use just a paintbrush and to dip in the slip to help smooth out the inside. Color shaper, some type of little potter's thumb. This has a double tool, but I use this to smooth out around feet that I put on plates, but on this end is a little potter's thumb to help smooth. And of course, my clay cutter knife. I use the knife to cut rather than the needle tool. The needle tool kind of tears through your clay, where this cuts it. And of course, my clay. I have rolled out my clay. Now, however you roll out yours, with a rolling pin or however you do it, you want to make sure that it is smooth on both sides. This kind of compresses it. You want to make sure I do use the stiffer rib for that. And I flip it and smooth out the other side. Be careful not to twist your clay, because your clay will have a memory, and it will warp on you with the memory. Alright, we'll make sure that it is smoothed out really well. Also on my list of tools is a wear board of some kind. I use these little thin ones. I just have a bunch of them around the shop, and so that's what these go on my wheel, so I use them a lot. And I want to put some texture in it, and you see that there are a lot of options for texture. I've got stamps, I've got little rollers, I've got mats. I am going to use a rolling pin. This is one of my newer ones that I have gotten, and this will be my first time to to use it in clay, and I thought this would make a neat mug. So that's what we're going for today. Now, if I know I've got a lot more clay than what's going to take for the mug. I'll probably make 2 mugs with this, but I am going to roll the texture in all of it, so whatever I make after this, what I don't use, I can either wedge back up and use again, or I can find something else to make with it. All right, I've got good texture. I will loosen it then. Make sure that it's not stuck to my work mat. I use the U wedge, the capital U dash W-E-D-G-E, U wedge mat. It's a work mat I get online. Clay doesn't stick to it. It's great. You can cut on it. You can do whatever you want. You just about can't hurt it at all. So now I'm going to take my template, and I'm going to find me a really pretty spot, but I don't want to waste a lot of clay, so I'm going to find a good place. Looks like I'm going to line it up right here. Right, I'm going to take my clay knife, and I'm going to cut across the top, and I'm going to cut across the bottom straight. Alright, now for the ends, I'm going to bevel them. I'm going to cut at an angle like this at the front and keep my hand the same way and cut an angle that way. I've seen people cut and then flip the clay over and cut again, but if you do it like this, you don't have to flip it. The less you handle it, the better, the less it is to warp. Okay? Alright, so there's my template. I also want to find a good place for the bottom. Let's see. There's these little pieces. I will wedge these back up and make something new with it. Okay, let's see. This takes the 4-inch bottom. Now, if you'll let your clay set a little while, it'll stiffen up some. It'll be easier to handle. This is a little bit soft for me just yet. This clay takes a little while to set up. Alright, and here's my bottom. Now I want to put my maker's mark on here. Now I've got a large stamp and I've got a small one, and I think since I'm doing the texture on the bottom, I just want a small stamp on it. So I'm going to put over here to the side my maker's mark. Okay. Lay my pieces on here, and I can show you the texture. If you see the texture on here real well. Okay, now it's work time. So I'm going to use a banding wheel. You don't have to. It just makes it easier. And I'm going to sit for this one. Easy to do that. Okay. Now first I want to serrate and slip and score these edges here. Now you don't want too much slip on this. This is pretty wet clay, so I don't need much on it. If your clay is a little bit drier, you'll need more. Don't want to overdo it. Alright, I'm going to stand this up and bring it around. And I'm lining this up. I can move a little closer where you can see better. Okay, I'm going to line this up kind of this way, kind of overlapping a little bit, and just kind of roll it up. You don't want to press too hard because you'll press out your texture that you put in. All right. Like I've got a fairly good joint. I'm going to use the rubber tip tool, and I did join it in one of these seams in the texture, so it'll look like it's just part of it. Make sure we've got a good join on this outside. All right. I'll use my little rib. Smooth this top. All right. And I'm going to work on the inside. If you'll look inside here, you can see a pretty good seam. And this yellow rib is stiffer, so it is going to kind of smooth out. I'm cupping the mug, the clay, with my left hand, and I'm going to go through and do this lightly to just smooth that out. Okay. If you'll see, we've pretty much got it smooth on this end. Now I'm going to flip it over gently, and I'm going to work on this top part. Make sure the end is done, and smooth over inside. Again, cupping the outside of it. Okay. Now, we've got our join. We have a complete cylinder. You see? Now to decide which is the top or the bottom. And I like the other end. I like this to be the bottom. Right? So I'm going to turn this over so we're working just with the smooth side that'll be on the inside, the texture will be on the outside. I'm going to take my serrated tool. I believe I lost it that quick. Where did it go? There it is. Alright, I'm going to get a little slip on it. And I'm just going to score the top. And I'm going to score around the edge of this bottom piece. Just around the edge. Alright. Now I kind of want this in the middle so that I can spin it. Now I'm going to flip this over and make these ends meet. You can see it. Try to stay out of your view. Lining it up pretty well. I'm pressing inside and out of the clay and lining it up onto my little bottom piece. Now if you don't have a cookie cutter, no problem. Just cut you a square of clay that is bigger than your cylinder. Lay your cylinder on top and cut around it to get your bottom. Okay. Alright, so I've got that joined. That is lined up. Okay. I'm going to use my paintbrush. I'm going to wet it and then pat it out on the sponge. You want it wet some, but not too much. Alright, and I'm just going around the bottom edge. I'm just going back and forth, smoothing that clay, smoothing the slip that is inside, and joining the two where it's really smooth joined. Alright, I'm going to take my potter's thumb, going around the bottom as it spins. Now if you don't have a banding wheel, that's fine. Just turn it as you're going. You don't have to have a banding wheel, it just spins easier on a banding wheel, of course. Alright. Make sure that it's really smooth. Got a good join. Alright. Now, I'm going to work on the bottom. If you were throwing this on the wheel, you would, the next day when it got leather hard, you'd get it and clean it and trim the bottom. Well, we're going to go ahead and trim this now before we finish the mug. So gently pull it up, set it here. Alright, I'm going to use the little rib and I'm just smoothing out the bottom. Being careful not to lose my texture. Going to wet my sponge and squeeze it out real well. At this point, you don't want to put much water on it. You're just using just enough to either moisten your finger or moisten the clay just a little in order to get it smooth. Make sure that this is really smooth. Okay. Because once we turn this back over, we're not touching it again until it has stiffened up pretty well. Okay. All right. Make sure my hands are dry. I'm going to flip it back over. And I'm going to flip this over. I want to put it on a dry side. If your wear board is wet, it will stick. All right. Again, we've got just a moist towel. I'm going to go in and belly it out and level it out. If you make sure, it depends on how much you want to belly out your mug. This one was just a tiny bit. See, it just bellied out right in here. You can leave it straight, or you can. This is where it's your choice on what you do. Okay, I don't like a real wide top, but I do like to belly it out just a little, and I will stand up to do that so that I can. I'm going to go in, and I'm going to sweep across the bottom as well, actually, I showed you backwards. I'm doing it from right to left and cupping it on the outside as I go around, because I want it even all the way around. And turn my sponge around and go through one more time. Looks like I got just about how I want it. All right, I want to make sure that it's even. Okay, looks pretty well. Now I'm going to work on my lip. Now the texture comes all the way to the top of your mug. I don't really like that feel when I'm drinking. Sometimes it can be a little rough. So I will smooth out just up here around the lip so that it makes it comfortable when you're drinking out of it. Now I'm taking my fingers and going across as I'm turning it and just kind of pinching a little bit to thin out that lip. I have had people ask me, can they have a mug that is not as thick, because they don't like that thick feel when they drink. So that's something else to keep in mind when you're making a hand-built mug. Making sure it's really smooth. Okay. Now I want to collar, so I'm putting my hand here. I'm just making sure that it's even around. I don't want it beveled out a whole lot at the top, but I want just a little bit of prominence there. You want to be able to see that it's shaped like that. Of course, you shape it like you want to. Okay, and that is all except for the handle. There is your mug. It's that simple. Now, a handle can be several different ways. You can cut a strip and make a strip handle. You can use what they call a handheld extruder. I think I've got something that could be used like that, and just drag it through the clay. Some of your trimming tools, some of your tools like this that you use to trim on the wheel, can also be used to make a handle. You just take your chunk of clay and you drag this through here, and it makes a handle. Try it. Just practice on it and try it. Or you can pull a handle, which is what I like to do. So I'm going to cut this right here off from where I used this little bit of clay and this bit of clay. I'm going to wedge them together. Now this clay is still pretty soft. And once I get it wedged together, I'm going to shape it, sort of like a carrot. You want it fatter on top, thinner on the bottom. Okay? Now, let's move this out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. I've had a really good teacher helping me learn how to pull a handle. You see, it's sort of shaped like a carrot. I did flatten it just a little bit, but you're going to do that now anyway. So this gives you something to hold on to. The narrow part is the part you're going to work on for your handle. So I'm going to wet one hand. I'm not dipping the clay in the water. I'm dipping my hand in the water. I'm going to pinch and pull slightly, flip it, pinch and pull slightly. Be careful before you get your clay wet, it can break it off or stretch it too much. So I'm going to keep my hand, I'm going 3 different pulls. One, a scissor, and then this way. So you pull, thumb pull, you got like the U pull, and you got the scissor pull. And you're going to flip it over and do it again. 1, 2, 3. Flip it. 1, 2, 3. Keep your hands wet. Thumb, U, scissor. You see it's thinning it out? Flip it around. Thumb, U, scissor. Thumb, U, scissor. If you practice this, you will have your handle. All right, the thumb stretches it out. The U keeps it from getting too wide. The scissor keeps it from getting too thick. Pull it out. Keep it from getting too wide. Keep it from getting too thick. Now you see it's gotten pretty long. It's pretty even all the way down. All right. You need approximately 6 inches. Well, sometimes that happens. So we just keep on going till we get our 6 inches. So if it breaks on you, think, oh yeah, it broke on her too. You just keep on going. When you get about 6 inches, that's enough to make your handle. You won't use all of it, but it's better to have a little bit more to cut off and trim than to not have one quite long enough. Okay, so my handle is done. Clean up my little spot here. I am going to put this, shape it like this and over, and clip it off. And I'm putting it on my wear board. I'm going to use my knife to cut the excess off. Now this is pretty wet, so I'm going to take a dry sponge and put it under it and let it sit till it stiffens up. Okay, I'm going to leave it like that. When it is done, then I can attach it to the mug. And what I'll do now to go ahead and show you how to attach it to the mug, I'm going to do what I normally don't do and cut a strip handle. That can go ahead and be attached now because you don't add more water to it. Once you add water to the clay making the pulled handle, you have to let it set a little while. Okay, so to make a strip handle again, you need approximately 6 inches. So I'm going to take a stick that I keep here. Now I use these little sticks. I actually got this from our local hardware store, Lowe's. And in the scrap bucket, they had this big long stick, and I just cut it in half so I have 2. This is 1 inch by 1/4 of an inch. I also have one that's 3/4 of an inch square. I have different sizes, but this is what I use the most. So this is, maybe it's 3/4 of an inch. Yes, this one is 3/4 of an inch. This is what I'm going to use to make my strip. Let's see, I'm going to cut off a piece of this clay. Let me do this. All right, table's wet. Let me make sure it's dry before I put my clay on here, so I don't want it to stick. All right, I'm going to lay this on here, and I'm going to take my clay knife and cut, hold it still, cut straight down on both sides. All right. Now, I don't want just a flat handle. I like a little bit of row on it. I mean, just, you know, a little thickness to it. So I cut it this wide. Now I'm going to flip it and cut one on the narrow side. Line this up, cut this side. Right. And I'm going to flip this over to the blank side, and I'm going to slip and score this. I'm going to attach it on top of the first strip. I'm going to do a little bit of scoring right down the center of that. I'm going to flip it over and lay on it. All right. Slight pressure. All right, smooth it around the edges just a little bit. And there's my strip to use for the handle. And I have made a strip handle. You can see there's the inside, there's the outside. Now you can make it rounded. All right, for the end of it, I'm going to cut out like a just kind of curved little shape on the end. Flatten it a little bit, make sure it's even. Right, and let's see, I want it to be right about here. That's going to be plenty long enough. All right, so I'm going to flatten this out a little bit on this end, and this turns under. All right, this one turns out. Now I shape my handle like an ear. This goes against the mug, this goes against the mug. You can see it's like this, sort of like an ear. I'm going to find the place that we join the clay, and that's where I'm going to put my handle. Let's move this out of the way. Come closer again. Now to attach my handle, you can kind of hold it like this so that you can score this in here. This turned down is the bottom, turned in is the top. Okay, I'm going to put a little slip on here. Now I'm going to line this up. Make sure that you get it up and down, because if you've got a sideways handle, it really shows. I'm going to place this where I think it should go. I'm going to look at it. That looks like it's just a little bit too long. So I'm going to trim a little off of it till I get it about right. Again, I'm going to pinch it, shape it. Okay, try again. Let me score this part that I cut off. All right, find my, here's my edge. All right, here and here. That looks a lot better. You can see how that looks. It's about right. Now I'm going to just tack it just enough that I can tell whether it's lined up just right, and I'm going to remove it, and if you'll look closely, you can see right there where the slip is left where I put the handle. So that's where I'm going to score this. Now I am going to hold the inside. I'm not pushing on this, but I do want to make sure that I have the inside secure. All right, I want to make sure there's some slip on there. I did score it. All right, now time to attach your handle. Now I'm going to attach the top first. I'm lining it up on this spot where it slipped, and I'm just mashing, pinching slightly. You don't want to distort the clay, but you do want it attached. All right, that's attached real well. I'm taking my finger, going to press in where it goes. I'm lining it up, make sure it is straight vertically. Very good. And I'm supporting inside and giving a little pressure on the outside to secure it. Okay, now again, this clay is not set as much as I would like it to, so make sure that you support your handle where it's the shape that you want it. Now I do have some older sponges, you know, after you use them a while, some people just throw them away. I can't throw anything away. I used to be a teacher, you save everything. I did cut some in half, and they work perfectly to go inside your mug handle to kind of help shape it. Because like I said, when you leave this and come back to it, it's going to be stiff and you won't be able to move it again. So make sure that it's lined up like you want it. Put that one there. Let's get a little wedge here. Okay, that looks pretty well. And from my view, it looks pretty straight. Okay. Now, since you've been handling it and doing a little more, you may have gotten the top out of round. So you want to make sure that it is still round. There are several ways that you can round things. I have made rounders on the wheel. I have handmade rounders. And I have terracotta flower pot. And that's what I'm going to use today is the flower pot. I'm just checking. Just give it a little tap to make sure that it is perfect round. Going to slightly lift this out. And now my mug is done. Now I'm going to use this handle for the other mug that I'm making. You know, I rolled out enough clay to do 2 mugs. Now this will be 2 different kinds of handles. Just check and make sure that your handle is shaped like you want it before it stiffens, and that you keep it straight. It's not wonky. You want a good straight handle. You want to be able to look at it from the top and it looks straight. Okay? And that, my friend, is all you do to make a hand-built mug. You can make it. All you need is something that you can cut. Now, you don't even have to have a template. Just measure out and cut your piece. If you don't have, I'm just checking this in here. If you don't have a cookie cutter, just score your cylinder, place it down on your piece of clay, and then you score where that slip has been left behind, tack it together, and cut around it. So there is other ways to do it. You don't have to have all these tools. So there you go, and thank you for joining me today. Maybe we'll make something else in the near future, and I'll share that with you. I am going to take my little rubber tip tool and make sure that this is cleaned up here on this little strip handle. That is one other thing. Just make sure all your joins are smooth and the slip is cleaned away. If you leave a lot of slip on it, it is prone to crack. So, of course, then you'll bisfire this and glaze it how you'd like. Oh, so many choices on how to glaze this. So we'll get back with you on that. And I thank you so much for joining me in the mud shop. This has been fun. Bye.